Somewhere around 47, maybe 48, you deleted the last dating app off your phone. You didn't tell anyone. You didn't post about it. You just held your thumb on the icon, watched it wiggle, and tapped the little X. And the weird part? How good it felt. Like putting down a bag you forgot you were carrying. Everybody's out here writing articles about Gen Z and their dating app burnout. Millennials and their situationships. Meanwhile, there's a whole generation of people in their mid-40s to late 50s who quietly closed the door on dating and didn't make a TikTok about it. They just stopped. No announcement, no movement, no hashtag. They did what they've always done. They handled it alone and moved on. I'm Frank, by the way, and today we're going to talk about what happens when an entire generation decides that looking for love just isn't worth the energy anymore, and why that decision makes a lot more sense than people want to admit. Let's start with something that sounds cold but isn't. According to Pew Research, about 29% of adults between 40 and 54 are living without a romantic partner. That's almost 1 in 3. And among those who are single, a huge chunk aren't swiping, aren't searching, aren't putting themselves out there at all. The Survey Center on American Life found that 41% of single Americans say they're not dating and not looking to date. Not heartbroken, not on a break, just done. Now, everybody wants to psychoanalyze that. People here gave up on dating and they assume depression, bitterness, some wound that never healed. And sure, for some people, there's a wound. But for a lot of the people we're talking about today, they ran the numbers. They looked at what dating cost them, emotionally, financially, mentally, and they looked at what they were getting back. And the math stopped making sense. You know who's good at running those numbers? Somebody who's been doing them since they were 9 years old and realized nobody was coming to pick them up from school. See, here's what people forget. This is a generation that learned independence before they had a word for it. A lot of these folks were the first ones home after school. Door unlocked or key in the mailbox. No adult in the house until 6, sometimes 7. You made your own snacks. You watched your own back. You figured things out. And somewhere along the way, that skill, figuring things out alone, stopped being something you did and started being something you were. So when you ask someone like that to open themselves up to another person at 50, you're asking them to override 40 years of programming that says vulnerability gets you left in a parking lot. And most people don't override that kind of programming without a very good reason. Dating at 52 with a stranger from an app, for a lot of people, that doesn't qualify. And here's where it gets interesting. This same generation, the one now sitting out the dating game, was actually great at dating when they were young. More than 3 out of 4 people in this age group had a boyfriend or a girlfriend during their teenage years. That's higher than any generation since. They knew how to meet people. They knew how to talk to people. They didn't have apps. They had eye contact and a reason to walk across a room. They could read a room before they could drive a car. So what changed? A few things. First, and this is the big one, a lot of them already tried. They got married. They did the thing they were supposed to do. And a decent number of them watched it fall apart. Here's a number that doesn't get enough attention. Only 47% of Gen X adults say they are very satisfied with their marriage. That is the lowest of any generation measured. Lower than millennials at 65%. Lower than boomers at 61%. Barely half of the people who are still married even feel good about it. And the people who left those marriages, they're carrying something heavier than a broken heart. They're carrying the specific exhaustion that comes from putting 20 years into something and watching it disintegrate in slow motion. After that, the idea of starting over with somebody new feels less like hope and more like a second shift nobody applied for. I've been working on something on the side, a book called Psychology of Gen X. It covers a lot of the things I couldn't fit into a single video, like how your parents' generation wired you for certain habits and what those habits look like now. It's in the description if you want to check it out. Now, about those marriages. There's a pattern that shows up over and over. A divorce mediator out in the Pacific Northwest wrote about it. She said almost every potential client walking through her door was from this generation. And the story was almost identical every time. The wife spent 10, 15, sometimes 20 years asking for change, asking to be heard, asking her partner to carry more of the weight, emotionally, domestically, logistically. And the husband heard her. He just didn't think she meant it because she stayed. Every time she said she was done, she stayed. Until one day, she didn't. And then he's on the phone with a lawyer saying he has no idea what happened. 69% of divorces are initiated by women. That stat alone should tell you something. Women reach a breaking point that the men in their lives often don't see coming because they weren't watching for it. They were comfortable. The system was working for them. So now you've got a woman on the other side of a divorce she didn't want, but felt she had to initiate. And you've got a man on the other side of a divorce he didn't see coming. Both of them are hurt. Both of them are tired. And both of them are looking at the dating world in their 40s and 50s and thinking, for what? Because here's the other thing. The dating world they walked back into is unrecognizable. When they were 25, you met someone at a party or through a friend or at work. You talked. You felt something or you didn't. There was no algorithm deciding who you saw. No paywall between you and a conversation. No profile to build. No bio to write where you try to make yourself sound interesting in 300 characters while also seeming like you don't care too much. The whole thing was simpler. Not easier, but simpler. There were fewer steps between, I think that person is attractive, and want to grab coffee? Now? A Forbes Health Survey found that 77% of Gen X dating app users report burnout. 77%. And the number one reason? They couldn't find a real connection. Not rejection, not ghosting, just the flat, grinding reality of scrolling through hundreds of faces and feeling nothing. 40% of them said the inability to find a genuine connection was the biggest factor wearing them out. The apps were built to keep you swiping, not to help you find somebody. And a generation that can read a room figured that out fast. And the apps are only half of it. Look at what you're walking into. If you're a woman in this age range dating men, there's a specific flavor of frustration that comes up over and over. A lot of the men available in this pool are recently divorced, emotionally shut down, and looking for something physical without any of the work that comes with emotional connection. Most of them are just scared. The last time they opened up, it cost them half their house and every other weekend with their kids. So they show up to dates performing confidence they don't feel, keeping everything surface level and wondering why it doesn't go anywhere. If you're a man in this range dating women, you're running into a different wall. A lot of the women available have already done the heavy lifting in one relationship. They raise the kids. They manage the household. They carry the emotional weight of a marriage on their shoulders for years, and they're not about to do it again. Their standards are high, and they should be. These are people who already know exactly what settling costs. 20 years of their life taught them. So both sides are guarded. Both sides are exhausted. And both sides eventually arrive at the same conclusion. It's easier to just be alone. And once you arrive there, it's hard to find a reason to leave. Because for a lot of these people, being alone is the first time in decades they've had peace. Think about what their life looked like for the past 20 or 30 years. Working, raising kids, paying a mortgage, keeping a marriage afloat, managing everyone else's emotions while shoving their own into a drawer. And now the kids are grown or close to it. The marriage is either still functioning on autopilot or it's over. And for the first time since they were 22, nobody needs them to be anywhere at any specific time. The house is quiet, and they like it that way. I wrote something I've been meaning to write for a while. A short book called Psychology of Gen X. It traces the things you do today back to the rooms and the people that built those habits into you. If that sounds interesting, links in the description. Now here's where it gets psychological. There's a real connection between how this generation grew up and how they handle relationships now. A lot of these folks had parents who divorced, about 4 in 10 of them, according to researchers. And not quiet, amicable divorces, messy ones. The kind where your mom cried in the kitchen and your dad moved into an apartment across town and nobody sat you down to explain what was happening. You just watched and you learned. What did you learn? You learned that love doesn't protect you. You learned that people leave. You learned that the safest thing you can do is not need anyone too much. Because the moment you depend on someone, you've handed them the ability to wreck your life. And that lesson got burned in early, watching it happen in real time, through a hallway door that was open just enough. And then you grew up, and you tried anyway. You got married, you had kids, you built the thing your parents couldn't hold together. And some of you made it work. But a lot of you hit the same wall your parents hit, just in a different hallway. The marriage ran out of air. Somebody changed. Somebody didn't change enough. And the whole thing crumbled, the way things crumble when two people are exhausted, and nobody taught either of them how to ask for what they need. So now you're 50. You survived the divorce, or the long, slow death of a marriage you're still technically in. Or you never married at all, because you saw what it did to the people around you and decided the risk wasn't worth it. And somebody at a cookout asks you, "Are you seeing anybody?" And you just smile and say, "Nah, I'm good." And you mean it, because the performance is finally over. Dating is a performance, especially after 40. You have to present a version of yourself that's attractive but not desperate, confident but not arrogant, successful but not intimidating, healed but not cold, available but not needy. The list of contradictions is exhausting, and this generation has been managing contradictions since childhood. Somewhere around the third bad date with a stranger who lied about their height and their emotional availability, you realize you'd rather just go home and cook something. And maybe the most honest thing about all of this is that stepping away from dating is just redirecting the energy. It's saying, I tried the thing everyone told me I was supposed to want, and it didn't work. And I'm not going to keep running the same experiment expecting a different result. People who think like that aren't lost. They've been finding themselves for the first time in years. The people who've stepped away from dating aren't sitting in dark rooms crying. They're adopting dogs. They're finally taking the trip. They're picking up hobbies they put down 20 years ago when life got too full. They're rebuilding friendships they neglected during the marriage years. They're sleeping through the night without wondering if someone is mad at them. They're discovering that the version of themselves they like best is the one that doesn't have to answer to anyone. Is it lonely sometimes? Sure. Anything is lonely sometimes. Marriage is lonely sometimes. But there's a difference between being lonely in a room full of people and being alone in a room you chose to be in. One of those wears you down. The other one recharges you. And this generation has been running on empty long enough to know which one they need. Now look, I'm not saying dating is dead for everyone over 45. Some people find great relationships later in life. Some people get lucky on the third try. Some people meet someone at a dog park or a grocery store or through a friend of a friend, and it works. It happens. But the pressure to keep looking, to keep trying, to treat singleness as a problem that needs solving. A lot of people in this generation are done with that pressure. They've earned the right to sit it out. And if you're one of them, I want to say something simple. You didn't fail because the marriage didn't work. You didn't break because you stopped looking. You didn't lose because you'd rather spend Friday night alone than across the table from a stranger trying to figure out if this one's going to ghost you too. You spent a lifetime handling everything on your own. And you finally decided that includes your happiness. There's nothing wrong with that. There never was. Quick thing before I go. I put together a book called Psychology of Gen X. It came out of doing this channel and realizing there was a bigger story connecting all of these topics. If you want to take a look, it's linked below. You know what's funny? The generation that everybody forgot about is the same generation that figured out the thing everybody else is still chasing. You don't need another person to complete you. You never did. You've been whole this entire time. You just had to lose enough stuff to finally see it. And that couch on Friday night, that glass of wine, that show you've already seen twice, you earned that seat and you picked it yourself. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.